Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. I want to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s recent discussion about finding the environmental cause of autism and removing it by, I think, December, by the end of this year. I got to point out something, though. There are certain things that autistics, or really everybody, react badly to in terms of their mental health. And some people are more sensitive, right? Some people are extremely sensitive. And what are these things I'm talking about? A lot of food additives, heavy metals, especially. And I know that I react badly to exposure to heavy metals. So I've reacted badly to mercury exposure from fish and from fortunately, they're being phased out, but we used to have fluorescent light bulbs that contain mercury, and I'm very sensitive to mercury. I can walk in a room and instantly, I wouldn't say smell, but detect that mercury had recently been spilled. I won't go into the details here, but I've done that before. But mercury, and also one time I was working with a metal. I do metal casting, and I got exposed to some kind of heavy metal. I never really identified what it was, but I was able to take chelation drugs and get it out of my body. And also, I know I improved a lot ever since I quit drinking soda. I was only 17 years old when I quit drinking soda. And even to this day, I know I improve a lot every time I do intermittent fasting. If I have a tricky situation to go to 2 days from now, I'll do a fast. What's really tricky is if I have the tricky situation unexpectedly, right? So, for example, I can fast in anticipation of a job interview, a first date, or I can do that. What I can't do is fast in anticipation of the next time I run into, I do it when I'm driving on the road, getting pulled over by a police officer, right? I can't fast in anticipation of the next time I'm going to get into a fight with somebody, right? That's a little trickier to do, right? Okay, having said that, one thing that would be immensely helpful for myself and for a lot of autistics is there's still a lot of social pressure to conform to certain lifestyles, right? So, for example, I talk about how I do very well avoiding sugar. I gotta put an asterisk on that. I do very well physically in terms of how I'll feel after I avoid sugar. What I don't do well is all the interactions with people who think I'm just weird for not eating their same way. I mean, it's better today than it was 20 years ago. I'll give you that. But if you don't believe me, I would assume that you're pretty neurotypical. You can eat a lot of sugar and not have a reaction. You can always give it a try. Go 72 hours without sugar. And by without sugar, I mean read labels, ask questions when you go to a restaurant, right? You probably won't be buying anything from a vending machine. Give that a 72-hour trial period, right? I guarantee two things will happen. Number one, you'll notice a lot of social headwind. Guaranteed. The second thing that may happen, a good chance it will happen, is that you'll feel a whole lot better physically. You might be emotionally drained from having to justify all your eating decisions to everybody, right? And sometimes this justification thing is really awkward too. The other day, you guys see where I work, right at the community college. We share this break room. And one day the microwave was a disaster. Who knows what was spilled in there, and I don't want to touch any of that stuff because I know I'll react badly to milk products, sugar, MSG, stuff like that. So I lined the whole thing with paper towels just so I could use it. And I got distracted with answering a student's question. I forgot about my food. I forgot about the paper towels and all that. And next thing I know, somebody sends me a very angry email and even CC'd my boss saying that I left a disaster in the microwave. And, I had to and then I had to because he wrote to my boss, sorry, I got distracted by a student and I line these things because I have some allergies. I really don't feel I should have to defend myself just to keep myself healthy. So to answer Robert F. Kennedy's question, it's not so much a cure for autism that we need to reduce the barriers of autistics to live. They shouldn't have to defend what they eat, how they live, and all that, right? having to justify not going to various environments that give them trouble at work. Have a world where autistics aren't constantly having to explain themselves, right? So about I mentioned getting pulled over by the police. One thing I really disdain, I mean, I don't usually cause trouble, but every time I've gotten pulled over or interacted with the police or all that, they bark orders at you, and sometimes it riles me up to the point that I can't even remember what my name is when somebody's barking out like that. I'm not kidding. I have literally frozen up and forgotten my name when somebody barked at me like that. And I don't know how much training the police get on autism, right? Or in general. I think the concept that some people do not react well to those fast-paced environments ought to be something that we learn in health class in elementary school, if I had it my way, right? The fact that not everybody can eat the same food, that's ought to be something that we learn in elementary school, in health class, right? I remember I had I was working at a tutoring center, and the kid, he's in 6th grade, he was bragging about what he learned in health class, about STDs and about washing your hands, about various hygiene things. And I asked him, did they ever tell you that there are certain people who have food allergies, and when you're eating, you should be mindful not to get your food everywhere? And he thought that was the craziest thing in the world he ever mentioned. I said, why don't you tell your health teacher that when you get back to class on Monday? I think it was a Saturday I was working with him. And his health teacher thought that was the craziest thing in the world, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum, 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 bum.